Rebecca walked down the street. Nothing made her happy. What could please a woman who had been released from prison just 3 weeks ago? And she was a young girl when she got there, and also pregnant. True, at the time she did not know that she was pregnant. Everything was so complicated. Rebecca's parents were drinking, and not just drinking, but drinking as if every day was their last. Also, the girl never saw her grandparents, only knew that her mother ran off with her father, who quickly abandoned her. So the girl never saw her father either. But in her short life, a veritable string of other fathers passed before her eyes. Her mother changed husbands like gloves and made her call everyone she brought her father. Rebecca did. She didn't mind as long as Mama liked it. Whatever she was, Rebecca loved her very much. There was no other. When Rebecca turned 18 and school was over, which by the way she wouldn't have been able to finish without her numerous dads, after all, they occasionally remembered that they had an adopted daughter and even bought her things, not often, but still, it was enough to keep her from skipping school for lack of clothes. So after high school, Rebecca got into the first place that provided her with a dormitory. She did not care at all what her profession was. The main thing at the time was to move away from her mother. Life in the dorm was very cheerful. There were no alcoholic fights, but there were girls with whom they cooked and went out together. They even went to get a job together. Rebecca was lucky in this way. None of the roommates, and there were only 3 in the room, were squirrels. Rebecca has been hired as a waitress at the cafe, and the girls had also been hired to wash dishes and peel vegetables. But it just so happened that Rebecca was the prettiest of them all. One evening, on their way back to the dormitory, they were caught up with a group of guys. No naughty jokes, nothing like that, just walked them back to their campus dorms. Rebecca noticed one of them looking at her. His name was Noel, and he was the prettiest. And then it was like a fairy tale: flowers, sleepless nights, love. Rebecca just flew on wings. And when Noel invited her to move in with him, she didn't doubt for his seconds. They had been living together for 2 weeks when the girl met an old friend of her mother's. "Rebecca, is that you?" She didn't recognize her. She blossomed. She looked prettier. Noel looked at the woman with interest. Rebecca always avoided talking about her parents and relatives. "Hello, Hillary, I'd love to have a chat, but we're very late," and she pulled Noel, but the woman quickly said, "Why don't you go see your mother? She no longer looks like a person. Her new roommate beats her so that there is no place to live." Rebecca sighed. "Okay, I'll stop by tonight." She went, and Noel turned her towards him. "I don't understand. What beats men? Where are you going?" "Let's go to your mom's, see if she needs help." Rebecca reluctantly complied. Noel was from a wealthy family, and she didn't want to show him the conditions in which she lived. But Noel was like that, and if something was on his mind, there was nothing to stop him. They went up to the right floor. Rebecca opened the door. The smell immediately hit his nose, so much that Noel even took a step back. He looked around with genuine horror at the ugly torn walls and the filth around him. The further into the apartment he went, the more expensive his face became, and when they entered the room and saw the drunk mother with a bruise under her eye, he said, "I hope you realize that we can't be together anymore." Rebecca was genuinely surprised. "Why? What does my mother have to do with this?" "Rebecca, you're not stupid. I'll send the things here tomorrow." He left quickly, and Rebecca was left standing in the middle of the apartment listening to her drunken mother shouting, "Rebecca, my daughter is here. Why don't you bring your mother a drink?" Rebecca sat down in her chair and cried. After all, happiness was so close, she almost believed that nothing else like this would happen in her life. In the evening, when the apartment was practically looked clean, Rebecca heard the front door open. A big man stumbled into the kitchen and gave her a tenacious look. "Wow, we got company, and so pretty." He smiled unpleasantly, and Rebecca, realizing that this was the new husband, hurried to say, "I'm Nita's daughter." "I don't care. She's my daughter. Come here, my little girl." Her mother stormed out of the room. "Where did you put your hands?" The man waved his hand. The mother flew away. hit the gym, and fell silent. Only later, at the police station, did Rebecca learn that the mother had fallen silent for good. The man was coming, throwing off his clothes as he went, and Rebecca knew she was finished. A knife caught her eye. She grabbed it, clenched her eyes. She got 6 years. She found out she was 15 weeks pregnant. She didn't think about it before, she didn't care about it. And when she gave birth, the prison doctor told her, "You won't have any more life anyway. 1 in 1,000 can become human after such a prison term. Don't torture the baby. Give it up. He'll be adopted, and he'll be fine." She cried bitter tears for a few nights, and then she wrote a renunciation, "My little son, let good people take you away as soon as possible. May they love you, may you be well." During the time she had been free, Rebecca had learned one thing: you could give up on yourself and your life. No one would hire her, people shunned her like the plague. There was no money to properly dress and cut hair either. It was a vicious cycle. Rebecca just didn't know what to do. She hadn't eaten anything since yesterday. There was half a packet of rice and a half a bottle of cooking oil left over at home. She went to the address she had been given at the employment office. A janitor was needed there. She simply had no choice. She didn't want to starve to death after sitting in captivity for so long. She was about to turn the corner when she stopped abruptly. She thought she heard something beeping nearby. It didn't sound like a kitten, more like a puppy or a baby. She looked around, not a single person around, but the squeak was repeated. Rebecca looked around again, unsure of where the sound was coming from. Her gaze fell on the ajar manhole. She stepped closer. It was coming from there. Rebecca dropped to her knees, pushed it away with difficulty. She bent down, trying to see what was down there. Immediately, she gasped. There was the baby. He was crying pitifully. "Hey, how did you get down there?" The little boy looked up. "Help, I was walking, and there I wanted to look, and I fell." Rebecca realized that the hatch had probably twisted. Good thing it wasn't too deep, only 1.5 meters, maybe 2. There were pipes of some kind. That's what the boy was sitting on. I shouted, but no one could hear. He was still saying something, and Rebecca was cautiously descending. Finally, she took on the pipe. It was sturdy enough. "Let me give you a lift." She pushed the boy up and then got out herself. She looked at herself. "Yeah, they're not going to hire me now. Come on, hero, where do you live?" "I'm not far from here. I just need to cross the bridge." "How did your parents let you go alone?" The boy trustingly put his hand in hers and began to tell, "I only have Grandma and Grandpa. They thought I was asleep, and I don't like to sleep at dinner time, and I always climb out the window, but I usually play there, outside, or in the garden. But today, I made a bet with a friend and said I would go to the other side of the river here." "So did you go, Grandma? Grandpa will ask you." Rebecca smiled as she listened to the boy's chatter and tried not to think about her son. "No, you can't. That subject is taboo." "Not at all," the boy thought for a moment. "They never scold me. They love me very much, except my grandmother would cry a lot, and I don't like it when she cries." While they were talking, they came to a big house. Rebecca stopped. "Well, run away." The boy gave her a sly look. I can't reach the bell." Rebecca had already realized that Max, the boy's name, was also very clever, and along the way, he had invited her to visit 5 times. She couldn't tell if he was just inviting her over or if his grandparents were distracted and didn't scold him. She sighed and pressed the bell. The door opened at once, and on the threshold stood a full woman in her 50s, crying, "Hi, Sharon," she spluttered. "My hands, Max, God, where have you been?" Grandma and Grandpa went to the police. She took the phone out of her pocket, and while it was beeping, she looked at Rebecca. "Thank you, Jesus." Her hand with the phone dropped, and Rebecca thought she saw a ghost in her face. The receiver answered, and Sharon spoke. "Come over, Max has been brought in. Just hurry up and come. There's so much going on here." Rebecca wanted to say goodbye, but the woman firmly took her hand. "Don't go away. You saved our Max." The owners of the house are very anxious to see you. Wait for them in the living room. Would you like tea or coffee? Rebecca looked embarrassed at the woman. Thank you, but I'm like this. The sewer manhole isn't clean. That's all right. Come on in. On one side she was pulled by Max, on the other, as Rebecca had already realized by the housekeeper. Come into the room, make yourself comfortable. I'll bring you some tea. Sharon looked at her again and shook her head. What is going on? Rebecca honestly thought she was a little out of it. Max opened the door. Here, come in. I like to play in this room. There's plenty of room. There really was a lot of space, so much that Rebecca was a little confused, and then she saw something that immediately made the housekeeper's strange behavior understandable. There was a large portrait hanging on the wall, and in the portrait was her, Rebecca. She took a few steps forward. Max was already running the train down the railroad tracks, and Rebecca was staring at the portrait in silence. It was her and not her. She had never had such long hair or clothes. Even before prison, she preferred pants, but here she wore a light floral dress. The door slammed. Max, the boy, rushed to the old woman, who looked about 60 years old, but the deep wrinkles showed that the woman had been through a lot in her life and in passing gave away that she was older. The woman looked at Rebecca and swayed. Nina? Rebecca looked at the portrait again. Yes, that was her mother. Only Rebecca remembered her mother as permanently swollen, bruised, with short, disheveled hair. That's Mom, my God. Rebecca, is that you? The woman rushed to her, cradling her in her arms, and the older men who had come in next grabbed his hearts. Max, from the misunderstanding of the whole situation, cried. An hour later, everyone was sitting at the table, and Rebecca, with her head tilting and staring at the table, was listening. Nita had fallen in love with some guy from out of town. All he did was party and drink. We'd pick her up and try to talk to him, but a man like him, human destinies like paper, crumbled up and threw away. She ran away with him. They changed several cities. We found her twice, but she was of legal age. She wouldn't listen to us. Then she moved again, and for a while, we lost the thread that bounds us together. And then we decided, if she wants it, let her. We didn't know then that we had a granddaughter, you. We only found out when Nina died. Apparently, they found in her passport the details of where she used to live. We were so heartbroken that we didn't realize right away that you were in jail. Grandfather immediately started looking for ways to get you out, but again, unsuccessful. You gave birth and were transferred to another prison. We weren't related to you, that's why we didn't know anything. We used all our savings to get Max decided that when you were released, or rather close to your release, we would visit your apartment to catch you, since we didn't know the exact date of your release. What a paradox. Nina traveled halfway around the world while hiding from us, and she died almost next to us. Rebecca, by our calculations, you weren't due back for another year. I was released earlier. I just can't get it all out of my head. Why didn't my mother tell me about you? I don't know what's going to happen now. If you let us, we'd like to give you our love for as long as God gave us. Will you let me stay with you and Max? Of course, it's out of the question for us to let you go. Rebecca can no longer hide her tears. So, I can tell Max I'm his mother? Of course you can. Rebecca jumped up from the table and rushed into the child's room. On the way, she saw Sharon sniffling, a handkerchief running into the room. She sank down beside her son on the floor. Max hugged her. Max, my son, how bad I've been without you, he smiled. I was always waiting for you. I knew that my mother would come one day, save me, and be with me forever. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.